Good evening and thanks for joining us tonight. We begin with an inmate who escaped from the Iowa State Penitentiary this morning, and he has been caught here in Illinois. 25-year-old Justin Kestner was arrested by Illinois State Police just south of Geneseo in northwestern Illinois. Kestner was discovered missing during a 4:45 a.m. head count. Before escaping, he was last seen during a 1:30 a.m. head count. Police say he stole a car in rural Iowa, drove it to Geneseo until finally abandoning it. Kestner is serving a 10-year prison sentence on 2 charges of theft. Continuing coverage now to a story we first brought you last night. 8 people are in stable condition and 3 are in good condition after a rollover car crash near Buffalo in eastern Sangamon County sent 11 people to the hospital Saturday afternoon. It happened around 3:30 on Interstate 72. Authorities say an SUV was heading west on the interstate when it went off the right side of the road and rolled multiple times. Volunteer firefighters had to cut the top off the SUV to rescue the people trapped inside. 3 of the victims were taken to Memorial Hospital. Officials there say 2 of the victims have been discharged. The remaining victims were taken to St. John's Hospital. The victims' ages range from newborn to mid-30s. Still no word on the cause of the crash. Charges are pending. A Cass County woman is dead tonight after a rollover crash early this morning. It happened on Route 125 just west of Shiloh Road. Illinois State Police say 19-year-old Kayla Boyd of Astoria was traveling east on Route 125 approaching Shiloh Road. For an unknown reason, Boyd's car left the road to the right and went into a ditch. She was pronounced dead at the scene. Boyd was wearing a seatbelt. Independence Day is especially meaningful for military families. News Channel 20's Brendan Cullerton joins us in studio with the story of how local military. 70 years ago, Jules Hayno was just 18 years old and off to war. While his service took him to the Pacific Theater in the fight against Japan, he still remembers what the world was like when the fighting in Europe came to an end. 70 years after World War II ended in Europe, Jules Hayno vividly remembers Victory Day like it was yesterday.
There was so much silence, you could have heard a pin drop for a period of time. I forget when the president was speaking, you know, and then when he got done, boy, it went wild.
Hayno was drafted into the Army in 1944.
Truman had made a speech that no 18-year-olds will go overseas. Like hell, I was on it. I was on that ship.
A ship to Japan to fight for peace.
What they call a victory ship, built by Kaiser. They built one a day, troop ship. And I guess, I'm just guessing, maybe 3,000 guys on a ship.
Hayno served 4.5 years in the Army, spending part of the time playing clarinet in a band.
This was the climax of World War II. I played in the post dance band, with big band, had a 16-piece band. And we broadcast every Thursday afternoon.
As cities across the country celebrate VE Day, Hayno says he wants people to also think about the soldiers fighting now.
I think of these young guys. I could cry. But these young guys, they volunteer. And a lot of times I don't think they get the support they're supposed to get. They really don't. Because they come back, they're fighting a different enemy.
Decades after World War II, Hayno plays clarinet in a 3-piece band, still remembering the time he spent fighting to help save the world.
It's an experience you just wouldn't have again.
Again, it was on this day in 1945 the fighting in Europe ended, also known as VE Day. Now, World War II didn't end until 3 months later when Japan surrendered in August. Back to you. Good evening and thanks for joining us tonight. The top story all night has been the weather. Storm Team 20 meteorologist Greg Trumbull joins us now. Greg, where are the storms now? Well, a Missouri woman is set to stand trial for allegedly stealing from a Montgomery County family's GoFundMe for their deceased son. News Channel 20's Brendan Cullerton joins us in studio to tell us the story of a community coming together after tragedy. Brendan? GoFundMe's website says they have far too many pages to track each one for fraud. And even though there are some safeguards, they say you need to be sure you are giving money to someone you trust. New at 10, despite calls to tone it down, Republican presidential contender Donald Trump still standing by his views on immigration, even though he is getting mixed reviews from his own political party. More tonight from ABC's Devin Dwyer. Last night's heavy rain has pushed Lincoln area creeks over the edge. Logan County Emergency Management is urging drivers to steer clear of any roads with water on them due to the strength of the currents. News Channel 20's Brendan Cullerton joins us in studio to tell us why the area has become dangerous and what you need to do to stay safe. Good evening and thanks for joining us tonight. Severe weather tore through parts of central Illinois overnight, including the village of Forsyth, where the National Weather Service is investigating whether a tornado touched down last night. Dozens of homes were damaged when the storm rolled through, and heavy rains flooded parts of the area. One Forsyth resident we talked to described the effects of the storm. A man was rescued from the Sangamon River Saturday afternoon after a boat capsized. The Illinois Department of Natural Resources says it happened where the river intersects with Illinois 97 and the railroad bridge. Just after 5 o'clock, Menard County rescue personnel and a conservation police officer began searching for the man by boat. About 2 miles down the river, officials say the victim was spotted clinging to a gas can. Conservation police threw a flotation device to him and were able to pull him into the boat. He was evaluated by medical personnel but refused further treatment. The boater was issued a citation for careless operation of a watercraft.
Polling locations. Lindsay.
On the Democrat side, there's two candidates vying for their party's nomination: Springfield native Adam Lopez and Rob Mellon of Quincy. Lopez says in the last 24 hours he's been to Beardstown, Pekin, Bloomington, Springfield, and Peoria, encouraging voters to choose him as U.S. representative. He returned to Springfield late this afternoon and has been spending the last several hours making phone calls to constituents. A member of Mellon's team tells us the Democrats spent the weekend in Springfield and Peoria and the last 2 days going door to door and making calls in Quincy. But the Democratic candidates say they believe people in the 18th district are ready for change.
The problems that we've had in the state of Illinois are not just one party's problems, as we've seen. You know, both parties have fallen into, as I mentioned before, traps and snares, and people are really disaffected by that.
If we get our voters to the poll, we can win this, and I've been saying that since day one, and so I'm encouraging many people, family, friends, all voters. We've had a lot of Republicans pull a Democrat ballot, which means a lot to me.
Local political experts tell us the turnout of Democrat voters will make or break their chances of being real competitors in the 18th district. So far here at Grandview Municipal Building, there have only been 5 people who have voted so far. Live in Grandview, Lindsey Hess, News Channel 20 at 6. President Barack Obama announced last week the Cuban and U.S. embassies in Washington, D.C. and Havana will reopen. Tonight, Illinois farmers and manufacturers are joining in on the celebration. The United States flag will once again fly over the U.S. Embassy in Havana, Cuba. Experts say this step forward in restoring ties holds great potential for increasing ag exports to Cuba.
With Cuba, if they could start importing, more commodities a lot easier, that could make them a bigger, one of the larger importers of U.S. grains.
Recently, President Barack Obama took Cuba off the U.S. list of state sponsors of terrorism.
That was very significant for us because that allows U.S. banks to feel the freedom to be able to work with Cuba when it comes to handling transactions for our ag exports.
But Albertson says there's still more to be done. Trade restrictions, first imposed by the United States government in 1960, makes exporting agriculture products to Cuba difficult.
We're very hopeful. President Obama can't eliminate the embargo himself. It takes an act of Congress. Already we have a number of bills in place in Washington, D.C. that would do just that. It would eliminate the embargo. We're really excited about that, but we need more support.
Once the embargo is eliminated, experts say Cuba would have the potential to buy around $1.2 billion worth of ag products from the U.S.
The United States is right there and is close to Cuba, and so it would be a better, better location and be easier to get it transported down. Also, too, it should help lower some of their costs. So, because Cuba imports about 60% of their food.
The Illinois Soybean Association says before the trade embargo is lifted, it's likely Congress will first ease travel restrictions to Cuba. There's a travel bill working its way through the U.S. Senate now that has a lot of support from congressmen. Back to you. Adam, police are still on the scene here in the 800 block of South Douglas Street, where a 3-year-old little girl has drowned. Lieutenant Bill Neal of the Springfield Police Department says the girl drowned in an above-ground swimming pool that is made for adults. The call came into the police department at 4:11 this afternoon. The girl was transported to St. John's Hospital at 4:21. Medics did try to perform CPR on the way to St. John's, but that's where she was later pronounced dead. Lieutenant Neal says the girl's mom and siblings were home at the time, but the girl ended up in the pool alone. Foul play is not suspected at this time. Police are calling this a tragic accident. Live in Springfield, Lindsey Hess, News Channel 20 at 6. Adam Lopez conceded about 30 minutes ago. At one point tonight, he was within 4% of the winning vote, but Quincy native Rob Mellon ended up taking the Democratic Party nomination. Here's what Lopez had to say.
No, I have no regrets. I went 100%. I was up at midnight with some of my team putting signs up. The only thing is, like, the biggest shocker was the Adams County, because that's a 500 margin there, which the difference was 1,000, and we could have been a little closer other areas, but that, to me and my team, we were all kind of shocked with that result in Adams County.
Lopez says this is not the end of politics for him, but right now he wants to focus on his position on the District 186 school board. In the September election, Rob Mellon will take on Republican Darren LaHood. Live in Springfield, Lindsey Hess, News Channel 20 at 10.